background is really farming. I'm the 8th generation farmer on our family farm in the parish of Ardfield, just outside Clonakilty. We've been there for 300 years, so I think we're well rooted in the local soil at this stage. I've been, I suppose, farming all my life, but I also spent about 15 years travelling for business and in other businesses throughout the world, and just got a little bit tired of living my life in airplanes and airports, and started to look out for something that we could started to look out for a business that we were that I could work from home without doing too much travelling, and at the same time to showcase the fabulous soil and maritime environment that we have in our locality, which is something special and unique. And being a farmer, I think that working with food elements and barley and whiskey is a very natural progression. I always wanted to do something which would showcase the very best of what we could produce and grow on our own farm. And many years ago, as a young man, I did look at farmhouse cheese production and dairy products, and for one reason or another, that never went ahead. But I came back, and I still wanted to do something that would showcase the best of the dairy products and the grain that we grew on our farm. So originally started working with UCC to develop a few different drinks based from our milk, and they never really came to anything. But as I did go through the process, I began to realise the opportunities of the whiskey industry and how it could actually work so well in with the ethos that we wanted to show to the world. And from there it really just grew, and the fact that we grow our own grain for our whiskey and right on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean is something special for us, and we're actually really excited from both an agronomic and a whiskey point of view to see what the end results will be on that. We're out on a peninsula right under the Galley Head Lighthouse, and it's actually really good farmland there, which you wouldn't expect on a peninsula, but the soil is up to 2 meters deep in places. It's really sandy soil, very productive, really good for growing grain, and because it's literally right next to the Atlantic Ocean, where we've had centuries of salt spray blowing in that soil and working its way right through into the heart of that soil. It's going to be that I expect will make a difference and will work through into the flavour of the whiskey at the end of the day. It becomes quite challenging in the autumn time if you do get bad weather towards harvest period, which generally for us might be the 3rd or 4th week of August. So if you do get bad weather and it stretches into mid-September, then you get these really strong winds, which causes the crop to lodge, and then we have to go to our scarecrows to stop the crows from feeding on our precious barley and all the other challenges. But so far, thankfully, we've managed to harvest every crop. As I started looking at the business plan, I realised that the whole tourist side of thing was very important to the business plan in order to provide us with cash flow for the first 3, 4, 5 years while we're waiting for our whiskey to properly mature. Obviously, being in the local town made a lot more sense to attract visitors than being well outside the town on the family farm. The distillery itself is in a former bank. It was meant to be an Ulster bank, and it's located right in the centre of Clonakilty on the N71, which is highly visible on the Wild Atlantic Way. So I think, I would certainly hope that over the next 3 or 4 years this will become an iconic tourist attraction for the people of West Cork and County Cork. We've got absolutely fabulous reaction from the local community. They've been fully supportive, fully behind the whole project from day one, and we see this as being a big boost to the town of Clonakilty as well, and which is badly needed form of diversification for a rural town in Ireland. And while when Clonakilty is a great food town and a great tourist town, I think every extra business really does help make a difference. Got about 40 employees here at the moment. That would include visitor tour guides, and it would include staff in our restaurant, which is part of the whole complex. And we're pretty well close to maximum employment here in Clonakilty at this point in time. Of course, as the brand grows, as we spread on into other markets in Europe and in the US, then obviously the employment numbers will be going up in those markets pretty rapidly, we would hope. Our primary market is our home market, because our home market is the market we want to be known in and respected in and recognised in. And I think if you cannot own that, you cannot claim to go on to become a serious brand in other parts of the world. We've been in New York and Florida for the last 12 months, and we've recently expanded into 5 other states. We would hope to be in Canada and about 12 US states by the end of 2019. In Europe, we're already in about 7 markets and in active discussions, and another 2 or 3 more to expand our footprint there. We've doubled our global footprint over the last 10 years, and the indications are that we'll double again over the next 10 years. Clonakilty Distillery's contribution to that is going to be tiny in the overall scale of things, but I think that we can make a difference, and we certainly intend to be a player, and we intend to be a serious player in probably a niche space within those markets.
Originally from Grange in Cork. Just moved back about a year ago. Actually bought a house 31 doors to the left of where I'd grown up. So it's good to be back home. I'd always been interested in whiskey. My grandfather had worked at Cork Distillers back in the 80s. So we would have always had whiskey about the house, and I remember what caught me a lot when I was younger was the burning of the pudding at Christmas and lighting the whiskey on fire. I went to college in UCC and did microbiology. After I finished, I started working in pharmaceuticals. I had planned on going to do the Master Brewer course in Edinburgh straight away, but an opportunity came up to do some travelling, so I spent 3 months in Japan, a year then in Australia working in a vineyard. Okay. I came back to Ireland, which would have been 2010, so the recession had kind of really taken hold. And it was kind of hard to get a job, so I fell back into what was available, which was still pharmaceuticals. I spent another 2 years working there, and I remember working there, and I spent 13 months working on a project that at the end of it I made this tiny drum of white powder, about 10 kilos. As I hope, if I'm lucky, I'll never see this powder again, no interest in it. So I thought back to my original plan of I wanted to be a brewer and distiller. So I packed it in, moved to Edinburgh, did the Master Brewer Distiller in Heriot Watt for the year. I was lucky enough to get a job as a brewer in C&C in Clonmel. Eventually spent about a year and a half there. A position came up in Teeling Whiskey Company for a distiller. I applied, I was lucky enough to get it. Stayed there for about 2.5 years. I saw that distillery was opening up in Clonakilty, so I threw my hat in the ring, and it all worked out. The more whiskey out there, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because there'll be more variety in the category, different styles, plenty of room for innovation as well in the category. What I really like about Clonakilty Distillery is the fact that we grow our own barley here, and we're not going to be focused on like the yield of alcohol we're going to be squeezing out. If we get a good yield out of it, that's a byproduct, but flavour is going to be our main target here. So I originally started as microbiology, so I'm going to try and experiment a lot with yeast in the coming years. At the moment now we're just just after commissioning the plant, so we're concentrating on just getting some spirit into wood. But as soon as we have the brewing and distillation process nailed down, I think we'll experiment more with things, like yeast and grains.
Yeah.
The double distilled kind of focuses a lot of the grain, but when you triple distill, it really concentrates the fruity flavors and esters, which are from the yeasts.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of room there to play with different yeasts, maybe isolate some local yeasts, maybe for some insects or bees. There's definitely a lot of room there. Well, we always try and use as much local produce as we can. So we get all our grain from Malting Company of Ireland and our own raw barley. Even in the restaurant in the Whale's Tail, the coffee is a local company, roast the beans. I know Clonakilty is a big foodie town. So an addition of a distillery to the town will only enhance the food profile of the town. We've had quite a lot of issues, just from leaks, pumps, getting the steam boiler running correctly. As a scientist, I started in science. It's amazing how quickly some of that can go out the window when the practicalities of production dawn on you. Your levels of free amino nitrogen in your wort suddenly seem inconsequential because your pot ale pump is spewing burning liquid everywhere out in the yard. But I think every day we produce another batch, we're ironing out all these little issues. Soon we'll be able to focus more on the science again. So our flagship is our Clonakilty single batch. It is a mix of 11-year-old malt and 9-year-old grain whiskey, which we finish 80% in virgin American oak and 20% in virgin European oak. We have a port cask finish, which is the blend of 11-year-old malt, 9-year-old grain, except this, instead of finishing it in the virgin American oaks, we put it into port casks for about 3 to 9 months.
Okay.
And the single grain, of course, is 100% grain whiskey, and we finish it in Bordeaux red wine casks. I think the flavors will change quite a bit, but as long as I'm consistently producing something that is of a high quality, that's fine by me. We'll be bringing out quite an old whiskey in the future. We'll also be experimenting with our own new make. We're currently on 50-50 pot still, but we will be going to try and experiment with as many different grains as I can get my hands on, really. At the moment I spend 8 hours a day just on the production side, just making sure we're getting the whiskey out the door and splitting my time between going up to the warehouse and blending. In the future, when the distillery is running 100%, I see myself a lot more in the craft side of the business. So I'd say the distillery is where a lot of the science is, and the warehouse is where more of the craft, the blending, selection of wood. So I do hope to be spending a lot more time up there. I think it's maybe a little early to see the coastal influence on it, but I'm telling you, when you're standing up there in winter, the wind is going through that warehouse so fast, and the spray from the ocean is hitting you in the face. So I think there'll definitely be some sort of influence from the coast. Even the water, we will be casking the water and diluting the new make into the cask has kind of a salinity to it. You can really taste the sea inside it. Yeah, so we try and bring it down as slowly as possible. We call it our gentle cut. So I would say at the minimum time we take to cut a whiskey is about 2 weeks.
Okay.
If you do drop the alcohol level too fast, and say the temperature, because the well water can be quite cold, a lot of the fatty acids will come out of solution and you'll throw a haze. And we bottle it 43.6%, so it would dissolve again. But these fatty acids can saponify in the meantime and give you kind of a buttery, soapy flavour. So by diluting quite slowly, we hope to keep all these in solution. We try and filter quite coarsely here, so where a lot of distilleries would go down to 5 microns, our filters are 30 microns. I always said that, you know, if I was doing something I really cared about every day, it would never be like having a job at all. A lot of the times that's true, but definitely not all the time. To get into the industry, I would hope that maybe there could become an apprenticeship for distilling, or else just go to one of the universities and learn.